Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Certified Forgotten. We are your horror movie podcast that talks about films with 10 or fewer reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. We sometimes say our tagline. I like our tagline. Our tagline is kind of the whole name of the show and the entire reason for the season here at Certified Forgotten. But we like to say that some films are certified fresh, some films are certified rotten. Our films are certified forgotten. We've got a good one for you today. I think it is a rare thing for a conversation about a movie to leak both onto social media and into the text thread with me and Donato before the recording. But we'll get to all of that. For starters, I want to check in with my friend, my co-host, the guy who is all smiles and ready to talk about today's movie. It's Matt Donato.
I love when I get it's a little tease of how Monagle is going to feel about a movie. And I already know up front how aggressively on opposing sides we are. And again, our podcast is never a opposing sides podcast. This is for the love of the movie. This is to highlight the certified forgottenness of it. So that is not the energy we will bring. But, at the end of the day, it is fun. We get to do our little our chat later of just like, so what'd you think about it? And I got a heavy dose of how Monagle felt about this movie already.
We've got a Siskel and Ebert thing going on. I don't know which one of us is which. I guess I'm Siskel in that scenario, which is weird. I didn't think that I would be Siskel.
I never consider myself an Ebert, but if that actually does track for this certain circumstance in this podcast room only.
That's got to be how it is. All right. Well, I wish there was a third host. I guess we could do Roper. Roper was there too, right? Like Richard Roper, who sat in for Roger Ebert. The Richard Roper to our Siskel and Ebert. Donato, will you please introduce this week's awesome guest?
I'm going to do one better because we finally have a guest episode, and I do want to call it out because we've been trying to get back on the guest episode train for a long time. And I have had a list of people that I've wanted to come on the podcast just because I have followed their work. I know they're knowledgeable about horror in general. They're in the right groups. I know that they would rock the podcast. So this for me was finally getting someone that I wanted to talk to for a little while. And I don't think I've met this person yet in person, if I'm being honest, but it's been a long time coming. So this being our first introduction, it's Mr. Mike Mendez, filmmaker extraordinaire of the indie horror circles and beyond. And I don't know, you might know him from some of my favorites of yours, like Satanic Hispanics, Big Ass Spider, The Convent, and Lavalantula.
All right, hello. What a lovely intro, and yes, no, we haven't met in person, and this is a mighty fine way to meet. Especially talking about the film we're going to talk about tonight, which I'm so dying to know the reaction because. Oh God, I should save it for when we actually talk about.
We got to save it, Mike.
But it's a polarizing one, So I'm glad it polarized.
I was gonna say I'll start even because just in the talking about the origins and this episode being a little special too. It's because there are few times that we have had on our podcast the ability to cover someone's movie but then bring them on as a guest later. And I do want to shout out The Convent unfortunately fits our criteria because it was under the review threshold.
Does it really have less than 10 reviews? That makes me very sad, but I understand.
Yeah, but it was really nice to be able to shine a spotlight on The Convent and then have you come on as a guest later.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
You, Tyler McIntyre. I think it's a party of two right now. I think.
Right. Sure.
It is.
I feel now I feel like I need to get off the eligible list though. I feel like I need new reviews for The Convent or something. I'm like how far off we are from under 10. Are we like I don't know. I'll look it up.
Well, as a reminder too, that it's a completely arbitrary thing. It is a completely arbitrary thing for us to have 10 or fewer reviews be our criteria. It used to be 5. We make the joke about inflation. We'll probably have to move up to 15 at some point. But there are a lot of writers out there who have read or who have watched and reviewed your film that just don't happen to be eligible for Rotten Tomatoes. So
sure.
It is not. It's not that the audience isn't there. It's that big Rotten Tomatoes.
I know. I understand, but no, it's a hard criteria to fit, as we'll speak of later, because again, most of these movies you can't say something like Troll 2 or The Room or something like that. These are well tread things. So you really have to kind of go into the obscure, kind of like, all right, what weird shit did I see that most people haven't seen it? And I do a lot of deep dives, because I do a lot of stuff for Trailers from Hell. So I'm looking for the Shinya Tsukamoto, obscure, like, oh no, even more obscure than Tetsuo, but again, all those, I think have 20, 30 reviews, I'd imagine. So anyway, yeah. There was another one I mentioned Troll 2 from the same director, which was Monster Dog, starring Alice Cooper. And I did check that out, and that also fell under 10. So I had another one. There's another filmmaker I follow that also surprised. This one surprised me that he had under 10, named Neil Breen, who's quite brilliant in its own right. But he also fit the criteria. So there's a few. I mean, I had to think for a while, but eventually I got there. So.
Well, I mentioned Reflections of Evil to Brad Henderson. I don't know if you know him, but me and Brad go way back, and he's worked for Vinegar Syndrome and now works for TerraVision, and is just one of those archival, he has seen every shot on video movie that is in somebody's basement somewhere. And I mentioned this one, and he just lit up, and he's like, oh man, you got to watch this by him. You got to buy it. Like, he just went down this rabbit hole of like, you're in for such a treat. So again, like, the idea of the best episodes I think we get to do are the idea of just mentioning the title Reflections of Evil online and getting immediate such responses of like the knee-jerk responses. You're gonna get something over the top or something. So that's what I'm like when I do these.
That's great. All right, perfect. Well, I'm glad it fits, and we'll talk a little bit about how I found it and all that stuff in a little bit. So.
Usually the first question we like to ask our guests is how they get started in horror. But because our listeners, because we don't yet record these as video episodes because we just stick to audio, they are missing what I can only describe as just an incredible miniatures and figurines collection behind you. So for my benefit, if no one else's, can you talk a little bit about your collection? Because that's cool as hell.
Yeah, I'm a massive geek, and make no bones or apologies about it. I always have been, yeah, I've just always loved toys since I was a kid. I just somehow never grew out of that. I would say that toys and figures and all that kind of stuff was my entryway into making movies. I would make movies with my toys and stop motion stuff, and in fact, I made a whole series of them even during the pandemic. And so yeah, it's just my thing, and I consider this kind of like bling for nerds, so yeah, it's kind of how I look at it.
So if you never had a break, then you're one of the people that actually kept all the ones that are really valuable that are now selling on eBay for bajillions and trillions of dollars.
Well, but I really played with a lot of my stuff. I do have
like that. You can't do that.
I know. Well, yeah, no. If only I had known, or at least. But it was hard. I mean, I love toys. The idea of like, oh, do you have to hold this in a package for the next 40 years? Like, this just doesn't seem that likely, Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of stuff that's certainly valuable. I have like the original Star Wars mail away set, the early bird set or whatever. But they're open, I mean, again, these would be worth $100. I mean, I keep seeing these auctions of like, gives me hope, that I might not die poor. That I see these auctions of people auctioning off their Star Wars figures for like $1 million or $2 million and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's the day and age of the collector. We're going to finally, our ship will sail in, because there's a lot of stuff that's happened recently that really is inspiring to other filmmakers that I know, like for one, Joe Dante sold the original. He held on. Somebody gave him, I think, while they were shooting The Burbs. I think they were emptying out the Universal prop department, and someone gave him like, "Hey, do you want this sled from Citizen Kane? Seems like something you'd want." And he took it, and he sold it for I don't remember if it was $40 million or $14 million. It's a lot. Either way, it was quite a bit. Then another friend, Bill Malone, kept the original Robbie the Robot forever, and he just sold that for multi-million. So yes, I'm proud of my shit, and hopefully, who knows? I don't do it for the value though. I do it genuinely because I love it. I think largely I wanted to be a makeup effects artist when I was a kid. So I think the idea of being able to have an alien, I just got the life-size alien from Spirit Halloween, which is fucking badass, and I love it. Nice. But I think because I didn't become a makeup effects artist, most makeup effects artists don't have this stuff at their house because they're around it all day at work. So I have it at my house, and I surround myself as much as I can with it, and I love it. So there we go.
Is there something in the collection that has the most sentimental value? Because monetary value is one thing, but like, what's the one that you look at and like it brings you back to a memory or something like that?
Well, I mean, I'll say this because I get this question often about like what was the one thing, and it's like, during the LA fires, I really had to take a moment and kind of go like, what's the most important things in my life, and it was my dog. I had to make sure my mom was okay. I had to, myself and stuff like that. And so I think I grabbed like just a handful of like a couple Indiana Jones figures, just I think because one had just arrived, and like, all right, this will be the seed that starts the next collection, or whatever. But thankfully it didn't all burn down, so that was great. I'm very very happy about that. But yeah, no, I really had to kind of have that moment to myself of like that, can I let it all go? And because I certainly could have spent several hours, binding it all up and packing the car and and doing all that stuff. But I think it was just kind of like, it's going to be kind of shitty no matter what. So, I'll just take it all and, in one hide. But then again, thankfully, it is all still here. So
yes,
that's a wonderful thing. So anyway.
Well, you've mentioned twice, you talked a little bit about growing up wanting to be a special effects artist. You've also mentioned, growing up and shooting, I assume Super 8 little films with some of your action figures. Can you talk about those early cinematic experiences, those movies that sort of, made you realize this was something you wanted to spend the rest of your life in love with?
Well, yeah, I think so. Like, I'd say like early on, it was just video. We were first on our block to get like a home camera. This is the early '80s and whatnot. So I think that was fun. My brother wanted to be a filmmaker, and he was experimenting with stuff with Super 8 and stuff like that. So and we grew up in a time of cool toys where we had the Star Wars vehicles and we had the AT-ATs and things like that. So that lent itself to stop motion because in the movies they kind of had a stop motion feel. Now it was absolute shit what we were doing, but we were at least trying to kind of get it going, and then it just kind of became a way to kind of like be able to skip a book report or do a project. Like the teachers found it neat if you did like a video project instead of like a book report or something like that. So I started just kind of finding ways to kind of cheat around the system in school to not really have to do homework and do something fun. And then that moved into high school, and I went to all boys Catholic schools, and long before alcohol, drugs, or girls, none of that was around. So, so we were, honestly, I was just what we did for recreation times. We were big fans of like Monty Python and Kids in the Hall and Saturday Night Live and all that kind of stuff. And we would make skits, and I loved horror movies. So I for me, the comedy was always, and then somebody's head, comes off and there's a giant spurt of blood. And that was just kind of, the way they all went, it's like every it's especially when you're in high school, it's a group consensus. But like I certainly all the things always feature like a zombie or a fucking werewolf or something, because it's like there was me going no, and then it needs something like that. So but yeah, my early influences of course were Sam Raimi and like many people, and then later Peter Jackson and stuff like that. So I got really into the whole splatter core kind of thing. So when it got time to start making my films, right outside of I was probably like 22 when I started my first feature. I wanted to make violent where I was kind of coming up in the age of Pulp Fiction was like a big thing right at that point. So I think and again, my first movie is a bit of a collaboration of, he wanted to make kind of like a true crime thriller, and I wanted to make an Evil Dead type thing or whatever. And so it kind of started there. And then when I got to do The Convent was kind of much more of like, okay, I can really let my B movie, my love for B movie out and let that go. So yeah, I think that's kind of how it flowed from there. So.
And you grew up in Los Angeles, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So how did, a lot of the times when we have guests, even when we're talking to filmmakers on the podcast, they grew up about as far away from Los Angeles, Hollywood, filmmaking as you can think, other end of the country, the Midwest, Texas, things of that nature. Do you feel like you had a different relationship to movie making because it was kind of in your backyard?
Yes and no. I mean, I'd say one of the things that I feel luckiest in my life is that my parents, were immigrants from El Salvador, but they decided, my dad loved movies. And so he said, fuck it, I want to go to Los Angeles, thinking maybe I'll get into the movie business, funny enough. And so, they came here, but the closest we got to the movie business is that we had a restaurant on Hollywood Boulevard. And so we would see, occasionally, like it was like a big deal when then a very young Mario Van Peebles was like a customer at our restaurant, and we were like, oh my God, he was on the Cosby Show. It was long before, he was a director and stuff like that. And then like, again, we had these very, very loose connections to Hollywood. My parents were able to like get a duplex apartment, and the other apartment they rented to an actor, and he got us Lee Major's autograph from the $6 Million Man, and that was like a big deal to us as a kid. And then across the street from the restaurant was a store that I don't think it exists anymore, sadly, but it was called Hollywood Magic. It was just a magic store that was kind of very close to Hollywood Toys, and Muhammad Ali would come there, and and I'd see him across the street. But that's as close to the movie business as I came, was that there were celebrities around. And then every once in a while I went to school in La Cañada, here, on the outskirts of Los Angeles, and like across the street at La Cañada Prep School, Harry Hamlin, who was the star of Clash of the Titans, like was a alumni there. So it was always like, the movie stuff was around, but it was still very forbidden and distant for me. Like I was in no way, any way a part of it. So yeah, no, I mean, I was just making movies like anybody else. It just happened to be in Los Angeles, so there's a lot of advantages to that. You'll find a lot of more like-minded people that want to help you and want to like, oh, you're making a movie, cool, I want to work on that or whatever. And also like equipment and things like that, having Kodak here, or like being able to rent cameras very easily. It sure would be very different if I was in Kansas, or God forbid, back in Central America or whatever. So yeah, no, I think that there's certainly a benefit, but at the same time, I'm starting from scratch like anybody else. And my, first little entryway was, and again, it's amazing that this happened, and I just don't think would happen now, is that when we made our first movie, Killers, which, we made for $100,000 and just shot locally in basically our parents' houses, like me and another dude. He said like, hey, do you want to submit to Sundance? And I was like, yeah, right. I don't imagine we would get in, but back then you literally, there was no websites, so I'm trying to think how that even happened, or maybe it's 1996. So anyway, you somehow got the sheet, filled it out, and put a VHS tape in the mail and just mailed it off with a $50 check, and hope for the best. And a miracle it feels now, because again, I just don't think this would happen now. We got in, and that was the life-changing, kind of thing. And that's what kind of got me officially in the industry, I suppose. But again, that was, I could have been anywhere, so.
Yeah.
I think that's transition too, because, I mean, even looking down your credits, it's like you have this love for indie horror, and that's what comes through like so much. So where like you're always doing your own ideas and you're always chasing them like kind of the way you want to chase them. So like that's why I've always kind of been drawn to like your stuff, and making something like Satanic Hispanics, which we've already said before, is like, well, like, how do we make a Spanish anthology horror movie? Like, how do we make this happen? And I feel like just seeing who you selected in that kind of group, like, I see a lot of communal value of being in Los Angeles and being a horror fan. So like, I'm kind of wondering, like, especially getting into Sundance, starting that way, like, how do you feel about being like the horror community in Los Angeles? Has that been like a huge part in helping that, or?
Well, that part's a little different. I don't know that it necessarily helps, but it's certainly, well, I mean, of course, yeah, of course it does help to a certain degree, because that eventually evolved. You start off at Sundance or whatever. Certainly for a long time, I didn't know any other horror filmmakers. But then eventually, whether it be through festivals, whether it be through parties or whatever, you start meeting like-minded people, and it's just, I don't know, it's helpful more just psychologically that you're not alone, that you're not the only weirdo out here following this dream, that like, yeah, no, I just want to make really violent, bloody shit, that I think will really be, I think people will really enjoy. And so you start meeting more of your tribe, and then you meet just, people you love, and people that become your chosen family. Because I have been at this for a minute. My first movie was at Sundance for in like 1997. So yeah, over time, it's just, you're drawn to different people's work, or they're drawn to yours, and, friendships begin. And I'd love to say it leads to all sorts of jobs. I can't say that part's true necessarily. Sometimes, maybe, for other people, not for me. But either way, the community part is beautiful, and there's just a lot of support for each other, and a lot of moral support. I think it's always fun that, like, when I was doing Big Ass Spider, or even L'Avalanche, or any of the, kind of big giant spider movies or whatever, that, most of my extras were just Facebook friends. It was just kind of like, hey, I'm going to do a blast out here in Los Angeles. Who wants to run from a giant, spider today? I was always touched at how many people would come out to do this stupid thing. And again, as an indie filmmaker, also greatly appreciative of, like, thank God, because, we don't have the money to pay this otherwise. So that part is fun, that you can count on a lot of people to kind of come out, even just whether there be filmmakers, writers, producers, whatever, just kind of like, hey, yeah, I just want to help out. Sure, you need help, I'll be an extra in your movie today. So that part is really cool about community or whatever. So
yeah, very much. My first South by Southwest was 2014, and I haven't missed one since. So I've been going for over a decade, but missing Big Ass Spider.
Yes, by 1 year. Yes,
winning the audience award at South by in 2013, and it's just one of those.
I would love to not correct you on that and say, no, Cheap Thrills won, which by another dear friend, Evan Katz. So
incorrect write up then. I
found
it on the interwebs, but still.
I appreciate it, and I'd love to take it. And man, God damn it, Evan, you beat me. But I love Evan, so it's all good. So
no, I remember watching that one at home specifically though, and it was one of those moments of, I hate spiders, man. Like, I mean, it's just one of those things. I avoid seeing any kind of spider content possible.
Okay, wow, all right.
But I watched Big Ass Spider for review, and it was just put a big old smile on my face, and that was, again, like, getting your sense as a filmmaker of that opening shot to begin with, the perfect song choice, the Gunberg just looking up at the spider, and just getting that sense of you as a filmmaker. It was like so important, in being like, oh, I am lucky enough to, like, be on the same wavelength of the movies you make, and just kind of like ride that wave, and like go back and do a little back on your first stuff, and go forward.
I love that. I appreciate that. Well, I'm glad you are watching, and I'm glad it's reaching somebody. So that's cool. So.
You're still in the industry. It's reaching a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't feel that way so much sometimes, but but that's actually a good. Well, we'll get to it, but that's I think part of the reason I picked and enjoy the movie that we're going to talk about. So
I also want to ask a little bit, talking about the films that you've directed, the films that you've written. You're still a very prolific editor within the industry as well, and I feel like I was thinking a lot about editing while I was watching the movie that you brought for us today, because just the idea of how you edit. We'll get to that film in a second, but the idea of how you look at footage and start to put it together for Reflections of Evil, I can't wrap my head around it. However, I feel like that is something that is it's one of those disciplines within the film industry that doesn't get as much attention as it deserves. Auteurism is writer director. Editing outside of, like, a handful of celebrities doesn't get a lot of attention. So I'm kind of curious if you find that has changed, that particular role within Hollywood has changed over the last decade or so, if you feel like it's still an unsung part of filmmaking, or if you feel like there's more there.
No, I'd say most definitely it's unsung. I feel it's interesting. I mean, I because I'm a writer, director, producer, editor.
Mm-hmm.
People get very excited when you're a director or just a lesser degree producer. Then much less as a writer and editor, nobody gives a shit. So it is a shame, because it is a craft. It is difficult. It is an art form. I've learned to appreciate it very much through the documentary I just finished, because I did something that I've never done before, and I hired an editor and did not edit the movie myself, which was I consider a very good choice. But no, I mean, for a lot of things, it's a loaded thing here, because I think the editor doesn't get a lot of credit, and should, because he shapes and forms the film, of course, in concurrence with the director and with the wherever they're going. But I do think that the editor brings a lot to it, and no one. no one really thinks about the structure or the timing or the work that goes into it, and the art form that goes into it. So but it is what it is. It's like I'm like very proud to like that I edit on Beavis and Butthead, because I do a very specific thing. I do the couch gags on Beavis and Butthead, and to me they're like, I work on them and look at them like little individual short films, and like, feel very accomplished with each one. But no one cares. It's just disposable. Like, oh, do you? Oh, great. But then you post something that you directed something, and that everyone thinks you're cool again. So I don't know. So it's a little unfair. But the God's honest truth is that thank God for editing, because it's how I've made my living for the most part. What bought all these lovely toys and stuff is largely the editing. I wish if I had I just bought a One Wish Willow yesterday. If I had my One Wish Willow to break, it's like I wish I could make a successful living just directing, but I learned the hard way early on that's not that common. I certainly have a few friends that manage it and do it, but I could count them on one hand, and I certainly know many that don't. And I also think it makes me a better director as well, because when I'm on set, I think like an editor. I know exactly what I need, and so it's kind of feeding that or whatever. So I think if anything, one of the things I appreciate most about the art form and about doing it regularly is that I'm constantly telling stories. There's never a time that I'm not making movies, or rarely that I'm not. And so the editing makes me kind of fulfills that I'm always telling stories visually, and so I always think that it keeps my brain sharp for directing. Yeah, no, I certainly stand by it, but sadly, yes, it is not a beloved. No one goes like, man, who edited that? And look, I'm guilty of it too. I don't ask that question. I'm not. I root for best editor on like at the moment of the Oscars, and that's about it. Sometimes like a movie like Reflections of Evil, editing really stands out, and you really go, oh my God, that person is a maniac. But anyway.
Well, I also, following up on your point there too, working on a documentary, you don't need to get into too many details about that, but this idea of giving up control on one of your films, or taking a piece that has historically been yours and letting somebody else run with that. Is that something you recommend, especially for young filmmakers? Obsession is the talk of the year, right? Curry Barker did all of it. He's the director, right. He's the writer, he's the editor. The name of the bar in the movie is Barker's Place. So like I think there's this idea with a lot of young talent that you have to be everything. It has to be your movie through and through. Do you think there's a lot of value for young filmmakers to maybe give up pieces of that process?
Yeah, yes and no. And that's tough, and it all depends. And there's a certain beauty to be able to do everything yourself. And there's a certain intimacy that you have with the film that that you just know it better than anybody else when you edit it yourself. But especially on the documentary that I just made, which is called Guernsey, and I just really felt, and I did it for a lot of reasons. Most of them are kind of sad, and I did it because of healthcare, because it's an independent film and I can't pay myself healthcare. So, but if I stayed on Beavis and Butthead, I could have healthcare. And then if I could raise the money, then I could hire an editor so I could still be getting my healthcare and making a living, and film and making a film and moving it forward and supervising it or whatever. So, but sadly, I mean, that's just the state of filmmakers in America. And just, I think a lot of Americans is that, you need the steady job to try to move forward. So that was one reason. But secondly, and probably more importantly, it's the same reason that I don't shoot my own movies or act in them, because there are a lot of people that are better than me that do those things. And so I sort of kind of like gave it up. Like I am not a documentary filmmaker. It's like, yes, I understand them, and I've certainly cut many documentaries for like DVDs and Blu-rays and shit like that. But that's not my it's not my bread and butter. It's not. I edit horror movies and I edit cartoons. And so the fine art of documentary editing is its own art form. And so so I was lucky enough to meet a guy named Tom Veretti who just kicked the shit out of it. And I just learned very, very quickly that like this guy is a better editor than I am. So I should just use that and be thankful that like this is for one thing a lot easier, to just supervise them and work with them. And don't get me wrong, I'll be honest, there's a part of me that felt like I'm cheating, because I'm so used to editing everything myself. I've edited all my movies, that I felt like, oh my God, it's that thing that you're talking about. It's not me that's doing it or whatever. But Steven Spielberg has an editor, Quentin Tarantino has an editor. People use editors. It's not like I invented this, like, oh, this is crazy. So if anything, I was able to edit a lot of stuff to give the editor and then also speak on a different kind of level. So that I think there was a shorthand or whatever, but I'm super happy that that he did it, because the God's honest truth, he's just has a gift for it that I didn't, a finer touch, whatever it is, but that just nails kind of documentary filmmaking. And so yeah, it's both. It's great to do everything yourself, and it's wonderful, and I've had many films, most of my films I've done that way, and it's if anything, the times you don't want to give it up, which has happened, it's more on like TV projects or whatever, but sometimes I haven't had it too much, but oh my God, I hate it. You get the producer who decides, no, I'm bringing on an editor that's going to be like my editor, which is the producer's editor, and you get kicked aside, and that nothing good has ever come from that in my experience. It's been like, we could work on this together and make this the best thing it could be, or we can fight about it, and we can try to outdo each other or whatever, try to get our ways or whatever. Thankfully that's a little more of a TV movie practice, but there's a real piece of shit that I made called The Last Heist with Henry Rollins, and I know of disrespect to Mr. Rollins, who was wonderful, and a deeply embarrassed forevermore. But the producers, decided in their infinite wisdom that they were going to recut it, which is why it has I used to have a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes. I think somebody gave it a review, and now I think it has a 20 for some reason. But anyway, but it's by far the lowest thing that I have on my Rotten Tomatoes page, yeah. I don't know if it has probably has less than 10 reviews, so it would fit for this show. So but let's not do that. So anyway, so yeah, so that's what it sucks, is when someone tries to kind of like, like, oh great, you've done this, we know better, we're gonna like re-edit you, like that's a real kick to the groin, that's very upsetting to somebody like me, so.
I was gonna say, I do believe that to succeed in this industry, you have to have a certain level of ego and confidence to get you there, but also the hubris to also understand that maybe you don't know best at all times. Like,
absolutely.
It gets 100%. You in the door, but then that collaborative process, like the best things that I can do as a writer, like on the journalist side, is listen to my editor. Right. It goes right back to editing every time. And it's like, I talk to other writers who bemoan the idea of like having an editor and just want to self-publish. And I'm like, yeah, I would have been such a worse writer if I didn't have editors shaping me for the last decade plus. Like, that's insane.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. And and the other thing that I'll say, I'll just add this one last thing, that one of the other things that I enjoy about editing is that I like working with other filmmakers, and it's a rare peak that most people don't get, because everybody directs differently. It's weird because, even though there's film schools, and even though there's, certain, obviously historical ways, and basically it's all the same kind of game, basically, everyone's got a different approach to it. Everyone's got a different style. So to be able to have the honor to work with somebody like Joe Dante or Mick Garris or or whoever, or Mike Judge, it's a joy. It's a joy to collaborate with these other people. It's a joy to hopefully give them what they want. It's like I like making Joe Dante happy. I like making Mike Judge laugh. Like that's rewarding to me. It's like I know I'm being the editor that I would want, because I know that I'm helping them make their vision. And so yeah, so you get a front row, that you get it a little bit also like through producing, because that's one of the fun things about it's the same thing. One of the fun things about anthologies is that you get a front row to you're wearing a different hat, but you're still seeing
Yeah.
how these different people operate. So yeah, so I think that's a cool aspect as well.
Well, I did write down 12 questions about Alaska gold diggers because I'm from Alaska and
Oh Jesus, fuck!
I really wanted to get into that, but unfortunately, I do think we have to move on and talk about today's film.
Okay, all right.
We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, it's gonna be time for the conversation. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. So, as previously discussed, the film we're going to talk about on today's podcast is 2002's Reflections, sorry, plural, of Evil. And if you haven't seen it, and you haven't, I'm going just you haven't seen it, let me give you, as best as I can get to, an actual plot synopsis. Bobby is one of many lost souls on the streets of Los Angeles, wandering aimlessly from city center to suburbs as he hawks his $5 watches to whoever will buy them. Los Angeles is not a friendly city. Bobby finds himself in screaming matches with everyone from unhoused strangers to a pack of neighborhood dogs. But Bobby's journey is only the beginning for writer-director Damon Packard, who also uses Reflections of Evil as an escape from tomorrow-esque guerrilla filmmaking project to explore the crushing cultural footprint of filmmakers like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. Is it effective? That's something every moviegoer will have to decide for themselves. The film is Reflections of Evil. The director is Damon Packard. Mike, you brought this to us. What put this on your radar first?
Well, first off, I don't know if I should apologize or expect a thank you. It all depends. I don't know, but
you'll get both probably. I know
probably. So I discovered this movie. My friend Dave Parker, who's another filmmaker editor, had found this movie because he knew Damon Packard, because Damon Packard was, and again, I don't know how much of this is all true or lore or whatever, but this is at least my understanding of it. So he was friends with Sylvester Stallone's son, Sage Stallone. And Sage got the brilliance, which I feel there's equal doses of brilliance and mental illness to this film. So I think he appreciated that. My understanding is that Stallone was kind of wondering why his son was hanging out with this guy, and they tried to show him Reflections of Evil, and you could imagine how that went. And he'd keep throwing it out, and every day or every time Sage was over, he'd put another copy in slides to watch list. So anyway, so I had heard about this, and I believe at that time Damon just kind of sold them out of his car. And this is a movie that, by watching the making of, I understand this is his inheritance. He got an inheritance, and he blew it all on this movie. And he has this hilarious interview. I mean, it's not funny really, but he's has this hilarious. It's funny and not funny, much like the movie is. Like, am I supposed to laugh or not laugh? I don't know. But where he's talking about, like, yeah, I'm blowing my whole inheritance on there on this movie because, I don't know, because I have to fucking make movies for some reason, because this thing's never going to make me a goddamn dime, or fucking like bring me anywhere, do anything for me. So I know it's just a big fucking joke, and I'm going to fucking lose everything on it. So that's how he's ending kind of the making of it. And I think largely he is correct, but that is the the agony and the sorrow of making, the agony and victory of making films. It's like, yeah, he lost all the money doing it, but we're given this gift. We're given this gift that now we can talk about and share with others, or and so anyway, and so this DVD just kind of made the rounds for a long time. And Damon is a fascinating person. I've met him once or twice. His other stuff is equally out there, and again, it's like, I make no judgment. I don't know what goes on in the mind of Mr. Damon Packard, but I genuinely think that it is some cocktail of genius, mental illness, and I don't know, but so there's something to it. It's not just like, oh yeah, this is just some crap some YouTuber made. Like there's an art form to this. There's something definitely happening there, and it might not be for everybody, and it's certainly probably far too long. But I definitely find myself it's an experience. The movie is just an experience. So you find yourself laughing hysterically sometimes, but it's also weirdly intense as well, mixed in with the what the fuck nature, because it's also very psychedelic, very strange on, it's also kind of making commentary on Hollywood. It's making a commentary on, this character that is very much like him. And that's the thing. I can't, he's kind of like Larry David or something like that. I can't dissect where Damon Packard, Bobby the character in this movie, and in the other things, where he begins or ends. I feel this is all some version of him, that we're watching. So I don't know. So I think that it's a very fascinating thing, and it's a thing that's kind of made the rounds over time. And I think truly hits the a true underground filmmaker, because I don't think he's ever had any film that's been like had a proper release or anything like that. Yet, his films are shown all over the world at like different kind of weirdo film festivals and stuff like that. And he does have a following. And again, it's like, if you follow his stuff, there's a lot of really interesting stuff he has made over the years. So anyway, but I think this is his kind of magnum opus, and where one should probably start, maybe even end, when watching the works of Damon Packard. But certainly a wonderful place to start.
Donato, this was a first time watch for you. You hinted in our text exchanges about how you enjoyed the film, but I'm curious, where did you land with this one?
I think I do agree it is too long. Off the bat, this movie is 2 hours and 18 minutes of just a onslaught of these psychedelics that Mike has pointed out, but also, again, like low budget gore, terrible audio design, ADR that will drive you crazy. And I think it is meant to at the end of the day. Like, I think it does go into the storyless quality of what he's trying to do. Like, there's no dialogue here is delivered one for one. It's all poorly dubbed. There's a lot of repetition in the sense of like kind of forcing you into submission almost. Like it's audio horror to me. So much of this is Bobby just eating the most indulgent sugary bullshit he can find, and the gnashing of the teeth and the way it just like the way it sounds is so upsetting, and like that is off the bat awful.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to interrupt real quick and say that my wife has a thing about eating in films. It really, like, she has to turn a movie off if people are like loudly eating. If you are like that, listener, you absolutely cannot watch this film, because it has the most disgusting auditory eating effects you'll ever hear. Sorry, Donato, keep going.
But I was gonna say though, as this entire fucking expedition into the odd mind of Mr. Packard is going on, like it's like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, Beyond the Infinite, and all of a sudden, like this feels more akin to like an apocalyptic movie where it is. We start and he is hawking watches, and all of a sudden we get to a point where there is just like mass chaos on the streets, and he is just wandering around like this ghost, and that becomes even more pertinent when you get later on. And then the guerrilla filmmaking of the like escape from Tomorrowland, like that whole idea of getting into Universal and just not giving a shit about any copyright infringements. Like the idea that this can still be watched places. Yes, it's not on any streaming services for obvious reasons.
I watched it on Tubi.
Oh, it is on Tubi.
It is on Tubi.
I watched it on Tubi. Well, you probably saw a very different version than what we saw then. It
was 2 hours and 18 minutes.
Okay.
And it had
did it start with like Tony Curtis and stuff like that? Oh, and it had like the ABC movie and all that stuff, all the commercials. Oh, great.
I don't know why or how, but at least today it is streaming on Tubi in what appears to be a pretty much intact version.
Well, that's amazing. Okay. Yeah, and obviously it had the ET ride and all the Universal stuff. But yeah, okay. Yeah, well, it sounds like it's complete.
That's what's baffling to me, that this exists and can be seen at a place like Tubi, and yet it's not even just the getting on Universal, the ET, the Spielberg, the Lucas. Like, you're watching entire movie trailers. Like, there is once again a surrealist piece of this where a greasy masturbating man is sitting next to Bobby in a movie theater, and it's a night vision for some reason, and you're watching the Lord of the Rings trailer as this guy jerks off and Bobby eats popcorn, and it is a consumerist nightmare in a way that it can only be shown through such low budget, not give a shit means. And I think there is both, to what Mike said before, there is a beauty and madness to this at the same time. Like, this movie never should have been made for the reasons that it probably drove Mr. Packard even crazier, and yet it exists, and yet it is
Right.
something that was put into the world to be a curio that can be like programmed on a podcast like this. Like, you made your movie for 10 people, and like, awesome at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, that's kind of how I feel. You know, it's not, the audience is not for everyone, but I'm happy. I'm happy it exists, and it is truly like, again, like you said, independent madness. It's just the like, I'm gonna fucking do this no matter what. I don't care. You know, I don't think he's thinking about the audience. You know, I was like, how are they gonna take this? You know, he's just kind of on his own mad trip. But anyway, but I admire it. I genuinely do.
So we don't always read reviews on the podcast, but there is. This is a piece that was written by Joseph Siemba, who Donato and I both know. He's the creative director at the American Genre Film Archive.
Okay.
And a few years ago, he wrote about this film, and I want you to react to how he writes about it, Mike, because I think this is really interesting. I think you can make a case that this is very true.
Okay.
Produced and self-distributed entirely by Packard, Reflections of Evil is a highly personal, psychedelic collage that utilizes 16 millimeter video and found footage to comment on the hopelessness of society. Similar in execution and intent to Barry Gillis's Wicked World, Reflections is true genre anarchy, a rage-filled manifesto that's simultaneously exhausting and invigorating. It's a movie that toes the line between artsy triumph and genre pastiche.
I think that's very accurate.
There's a good read there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. I mean, that's part of the reason I find it so interesting. And, you know, this is probably the third or fourth time I've seen it over the years, because, I mean, I think I saw it for the first time 20 years ago. And, you know, it'll linger. You will think about this movie for whatever fucking reason, you know, the madness to it. And, you know, I started to understand it a little bit more, and also from watching like different YouTubes. And then there are different like YouTube videos about this movie and the films of Damon Packard and stuff like that, which was actually kind of surprising to me that so many people had kind of discovered it. But, you know, I didn't gather that the reason the dogs are barking at him is that the crazier he gets, he's projecting it out. And so people are starting to go insane around him, and that's why it's all kind of starting to manifest. And you know, and the third act is and this is where we get into the kind of the art of editing, you know, is this kind of manic nightmare that is genuinely kind of weirdly intense. You're kind of like, oh fuck, you know, and then I don't want to ruin the ending if you can ruin it, and then it just stops, you know. It's just the end, you know, or even worse.
Yeah, spoiler alert, this movie ends with "to be continued." So yeah, there you go.
Exactly, yeah.
There you go.
And then I this is, I'm a little sad to see this, but, you know, for the type of filmmaker that he is, it kind of makes sense. I saw that. I think it's just a trailer, but Mr. Packard has gone on to make Reflections of Evil, the special edition, where he's added new AI monsters to the thing, and dancing Jello and all sorts of shit. I think he's just fucking with us. I don't think he's really doing it, but the special edition trailer is equally as weird and bizarre as the film itself. So
I've spent some time on Damon Packard's YouTube channel. He does do a lot of AI video making.
Okay.
And I think part of the thing that I have to be careful about is you should never let an audience's or other people's interpretation of a film affect your own. But there are a lot of people that talk about this movie like it is the answer to consumerism, especially on Letterboxd. They're like, this is it. This is the shot across the bow of Steven Spielberg. And it is interesting to me that the same mentality that created this does do AI filmmaking now, that's the double-edged sword, right? Is like, you like the anti-consumerist, anti-capitalist message, but sometimes people are just like, I just want to play with other folks' toys, and I don't care if it comes from Midjourney or if it comes from Universal Studios. So
it's surprising to me somewhat, because, you know, he has this amazing making of episode 2 that he did, where he, you know, like edits himself as one of the CGI animators, and it's such a clear, you know, it's actually really fascinating that he did this, because it's such a clear damnation to, like, you know, both fucking with your original work and how stupid adding all this stupid CGI is, and how CGI sucks. So it's crazy that, like, less than 20 years later, here he is with AI doing kind of the same shit. You know, it's the same, adding the same CGI kind of quality bullshit to it, except it's just cheaper. But, you know, at the same time, for a punk kind of gutter punk filmmaker that David Packard is, AI is kind of like an outlet that kind of makes sense for him because, you know, it is, you know, he can be unleashed there and he can do whatever the hell he wants, you know, that he's not going to get otherwise. So I don't know. So yeah, it might be a good fit, but it is weird. It's a little disappointing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So I do often say the type of movies I look for on Rotten Tomatoes specifically, outside of certified forgotten, lesser seen ones, is like if I see a 50% on the tomato meter and I see people giving it either hundreds or like a 10 out of 10 or a 1 out of 10. And lo and behold, I went on Letterboxd after I watched this real quick and I was like, has anyone else I know on Letterboxd actually seen this? And 2 people have. It's Chris Evangelista and Trace Thurman. Evangelista, 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loves it. Trace, 0 stars. Like literally could not rate it any lower. And I think in that distillation, like that is always what I'm looking for in a movie to recommend to somebody. Not because I want you to be like punished, but there's so much more discovery to be had when there is the idea of either loving something or hating something. I hate the idea of just like everyone likes this movie. Cool. Everyone gave it 3 stars and like we all have to rush out and see it versus no, fucking gamble on the thing that you may detest, but at the end of the day might be what you're talking about again on a podcast years later. Like it is what I'm looking for in my creativity. It's what I'm looking for in my filmmakers. I want to see these kind of insane swings. And I think Reflections of Evil is nothing but an insane swing. And exhausted was a good word. I forget who brought up exhausting before, but like this is an endurance test. And
it's exhausting.
I didn't know I liked it until it ended because there was a lot of that movie I sat there and I'm just like, what the fuck is happening? Because like, do I understand that his mania is spreading like a virus? I do get that, but we've been going on 40 minutes of the same dog barking now, and I'm like, maybe we can change that.
Sure, right? Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I mean, it really, you really, it is an endurance test, no doubt, and it's, I wish it would be a lovely 90-minute film. I think it would be a banger of a 90-minute film, but at the same time, you know, I don't want to stifle madness or kind of brilliant madness because this is one of those things where I feel genius and insanity, the line is just straddled like so finely on this film, you know, and there's very, very few films I could say that, and the kind of gutter punk nature adds to it. You know, of course, you don't want to see a super well polished, you know, version of this. You like that the guy's just doing this, and sometimes, you know, he's literally kind of doing a you know, whether it be a Jackass or Nirvana the band, the movie kind of thing, where he's just out there, you know, having real people react to him and just getting what he gets, you know, and you love that. But then sometimes, you know, he's really, and the making of is fascinating because you think it's so guerrilla. You think it's like, oh my God, this guy has just got a video camera and a dream. But then you realize like, no, he actually went to, I don't think it was Universal Studios, but like he rented a sound stage and all these actors to throw dummies around and have explosions for the Steven Spielberg sequence. And so you actually do see that like, no, there are times he's actually spending money and doing things. I don't know why it still feels, I don't want to call it crap because I do have a respect for it clearly, but why it feels so rough? Yes, you know, and so no, that's very interesting because a lot of the time it couldn't be any more guerrilla. A lot of the time it couldn't be, you know, it is actually produced. And then I think one of the other things that fascinates me is how he finds these weird clips. Like he'll show like a trailer for episode 1. You know, pretty much just straight on. Here's a trailer for episode 1, but he'll intercut new shots into them that weirdly fit, you know, that you kind of have to kind of double take and go like, wait, what? You know, and I don't know. I mean, he's just operating on his own plane, and I admire that.
Well, because he sucks us into the world. It's like a vortex. It's like you are brought into his mind in such a way that you maybe don't want to be, but you're stuck there. And it does make sense because to him it does. And he's able to actually communicate that in a way that, once again, I am baffled that he can do, but it works. Like I understand, like you're just saying, those clips interspliced, they do fit there because they make sense to him and then it makes sense on the screen. I think the entire, you know, or the climax of the third act, when it is the Universal Studios massacre, let's call it, and I'm fine talking about it because like if you get there, God bless you, survived to that point and you're rewarded by it. The editing of it is so well done because, as you said, he has these off-site moments where he's throwing dummies off cliffs. He's doing all these gore shots that he can't do at Universal Park, obviously, or
Right,
wherever they
right,
did shoot it. But then you have the actual footage of him getting real-time shots of all the rides. And the
right,
way that he is able to get that edit cut down to the precise moment where you can't really tell that much in a movie for this budget and this grainy and this rough, it
right.
looks good. Like
Yeah,
somebody on a bungee cord just kind of the bungee cord snaps and they go flying, and yeah, it looks fake as hell, of course, because practical effects and all that, but yet the technique is there, and that's what's impressive. Like that's
there's
what eventually got me.
there's so much crazy shit. Like, again, so much it's guerrilla and they're stealing stuff on the actual tram. Yet then you cut to these miniatures of they actually built this miniature tram with this overhead and built, and then kind of did these kind of like desolate, like kind of destroyed streets or whatever that the tram is just kind of going through, and it's just all kind of cut seamlessly. And I really had to kind of look at that stuff, kind of going like, what is that? Is that a fucking miniature? And sure enough, it was. And so that's the weirdness of this movie, that it feels like it absolutely costs nothing, but it's like, no, it costs a little bit to make a fucking miniature tram and miniature buildings and like shoot it and then and do the thing. It's like so anyway, it's just the movie doesn't it doesn't logically make sense in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's fascinating.
He turned a single trolley ride into Schindler's List the ride. Like,
Right.
what are we fucking talking about here? And it works.
I wrote him a fan letter. I've hardly written a fan letter to anyone in my life, but after I don't know if it was after the Star Wars one or whatever, but we were friends on Facebook, and I just said, "Oh my God, I just think your stuff is brilliant," and I just if he would do like the behind the scenes of like one of my movies or something like that, that would be like fucking awesome. I would just love to work with you in some capacity. I gushed and gushed and gushed. Never wrote me back.
That sounds about right.
Never said a word to me. But so it was kind of like, all right, man, respect. So that
Monagle, you usually ask the question, so I do have a question for you, because
Yes.
this is again a long movie. There is a lot of movie and there's a lot of different movie. I understand you didn't love this.
Correct.
But of what we have been given, what did you like? Like, was there a part that you were in it? Like, where was your piece of this pie?
There is. I recognize the third act with the Universal Studios stuff. I think that is that's what people come for, right? That's the cool, like that's what the write-ups on the Metrograph listing for it are and things of that nature. The part that really surprised me by how, I don't know, like how effectively it worked is the middle act. There's some cult stuff in the second act, but a little bit of the second act, a little bit of the third act. This film came out in 2002. It is a post 9/11 movie, and there is absolutely a post 9/11 experience happening in this film. A lot of what Packard is doing with the other characters, there is this sense that like shit is wrong and everybody is impotently angry, right? People are walking around, their bubble of safety and security and peace has been burst, and that's kind of intercut a little bit with showing like the idyllic 1970s trailers and like cutting to today where everybody's on the street just screaming at each other all the time. It feels very much as in a response to 9/11 in the way that like some of these slashers and torture porn movies were in the early 2000s as well. And I think that if I was going to tug on a thread, if I was going to go in here and like be interested to see more of what people have to say about it, it is that like unchecked anger where everybody's just mad all the time in his universe and just screaming at each other, and it's repeated to the point of numbness, and it feels like it's very much in response to like a national trauma that just occurred. And he underlines it by having a bunch of Fox News clips that play kind of in the middle of the movie. The only time he fades to black in the entire film is right before he does some of those Fox News clips. So I think that it is a film that for me, there's a lot of stuff in there I don't like. There's a lot of stuff in there I don't like, but it taps into these, it taps into these feelings. And I think that kind of it goes to what you said, Mike, the madness versus the brilliance is like, it is these things that you can't necessarily articulate. I've seen reviewers compare it to They Live, which I think is in its own way kind of an apt experience, which is,
Wow.
it is a film that is just mad at the world and it's not going to take it anymore. And it comes out in all of these weird ways about, the ruination of Hollywood, the consumerism of America, the post national trauma thing. It's just a film that has big feelings, I think. And when I find myself feeding into that anger and that what the fuck am I supposed to do nowness that I think that the Packard is playing with, there were some moments in the film where even when it was like somebody saying I'll fucking kill you for like the 8th time in a 3-minute scene that kept going, but you feel it. You're like, I feel like I can let me go onto to Blue Sky right now and like tap into that anger because people feel the same way. So there is some, it's mad. The entire thing, it's a mad movie, but there is a thread of brilliance in there, and I will not deny it that.
But I'm assuming like watching him vomit for a minute is probably not your cup of tea. I'm guessing.
Yeah, that wasn't. I didn't love that. I didn't love that. That first act was like I was debating quitting, which I've never done on a podcast movie.
Wow! Oh my god!
I was like for the first 30 minutes of it, I was like, can I get away with just texting Donato and being like, can you just talk to Mike about this movie? And I'll be like, that's cool, guys. That sounds great. But I'm committed. I didn't want to pull out of it. And then I think the second act and then the third act are really where there's a lot. I mean, again, it's 2 hours, 18 minutes. So it's an endurance test. But if you can get to those other acts, there's some really interesting stuff happening.
And I think his performance is pretty special too. Like I don't know why. Like when he is going like I'll fucking kill you. I'll fucking like, there is something that is equally hilarious and sad about it. I don't know. And then I also love the gag of every time he falls, the blood splatter, like like his forehead will fall, it'll crack his head open, and so I feel for poor Bobby. Is an interesting character. No, so and I feel for again I hope we get to more Damon Packard in the future, and I wish him the best because I feel like you're saying there's a lot of rage there. And if you follow him on social media, he goes to movies. I'm not sure he likes anything. He'll go like, I just saw fucking Disclosure Day, or I just saw fucking Obsession. And it's one of this fucking shit that we're, and he'll sometimes he sees old movies and he'll like those. But it's fascinating because I think it's more than a movie. It's a movie and a filmmaker and a whole psychological package with Mr. Packard. So anyway,
well, if he hates everything new and only likes old movies, is he considered becoming a film critic?
That's true. I don't know. He kind of is to a certain degree. So he's an interesting follow. I don't know what he's on. I know he's on Facebook, but I'm not sure what else he's on. But anyway.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
I think,
what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I wind us down by saying like I'm glad you brought up Jackass before, Mike, because I was sitting there thinking like this feels like a Jackass stunt at certain times. I think stunt is what stood out for me in the sense of it is this man and it's with his stomach stuffed with pillows, I'm sure, or fluff, whatever it is. It's not meant to look like good prosthetics, but
right.
He is just a large man that is just looks like it should be Ryan Dunn. Like to me, like the kind of stuff Dunn did specifically on Jackass.
Right,
like
totally, yeah.
That is what this felt like. Walking into a park, no one knows who he is, trying to be like, hey, you want to watch, and then fall downstairs and blood splatters. Like that is so much of this movie to me, and why I think it gets away with like what it's doing in those times. I want to say, because it does get more theatrical as it goes on. It has other ideas we've talked about, but when it's not, it does just feel like people walking around with a camera and just trying to capture just genuine moments of weirdness. It's not like over the top. It's not anything, but
they'll just like put him on the bus. He like gets on the bus and and then they'll the weird fucking overdubbing that they'll do, of some character, or whatever, that'll just say some ridiculous line as he walks. Anyway, yeah, I will say that. I mean, and I've always had a certain appreciation for this movie, but I'd say from this podcast, our conversation and the YouTube videos that I've watched, I think I have even more of an appreciation for this very strange film, so.
I started having no idea, and I'm now actively like, no, I like this. Now, I talked myself into liking this.
All right.
The last note that I had is there. I wrote down in quotes, "I don't know anything anymore." The old man to his wife, and also a celebration of this movie. So that is that scene, that bit of dialogue really jumped out at me.
Right.
All right. A last question, Mike. We always end this podcast by talking about how this film finds its audience. It has Compared to a lot of the stuff we talk about, it probably has as fervent an audience just based on its letterbox
It's surprising,
representation.
right? Because
Yeah.
again, it does fit the criteria of like under far. I think it only had like 1 or 2 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. But there is an awareness for this film, so I don't. I'm hoping. I'd love to. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm hoping Damon Packard has a website where you can buy it. Would probably be the best way to support it. Other than that, I think Tubi, because that's a legit source. But YouTube is very convenient, and that's how we saw it. So today, and again, I'm very happy. I was worried that the 2B was going to be, because I hear there's an edited version. And I'm like, God, that must be terrible. So I'm happy that you were able to see the thing. The streaming app Night Flight has a Damon Packard section. So you can see Space Disco 1 and some of his other greats. So that would be a good place to do the deep dive.
I don't know a ton about Night Flight, but the fact that they have a Damon Packard section completely jives with what I've heard about Night Flight. So that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So
Donato, how does this film? How do you think this film finds its audience, or do you think it's tapped out? Do you think whoever loves this movie is 100% of its audience today?
No, I absolutely don't think it's tapped out, because it is. This goes underseen. Like, this is one that comes up on the podcast, and I feel like it does have its fervent supporters and haters, but there's still a certain sect of horror fan that is ravenous enough. And I think if it broke through a little more, there might be other curious bodies that probably hate it, but would at least give it a try. So I think, to me, it is, how do you rediscover it? Go right back to the boutiques, go right back to some crazy ass fucking Terror Vision or something who would be willing to put out a box set and try to get Mr. Packard to like do some massive release of, let's get a few of them in. Let's see if we can like turn, your stuff into a long selling box set that people somehow, like cult fans, got to gush over. So I think that could be enough to get, again, just a little bit more, because I am sure probably most of the people who would have want to see Reflections of Evil have already. So this is more of a legend, more of the story. And as it gets passed on from generation to generation, it'll be in the same small circles.
I hope it gets a few more viewers because of this. I hope so.
We have a small but mighty fan base, and I think that listen, if anyone out there is courageous enough to try it, I would like to hear, actually.
Yes, please make sure that you leave a mention for us in all of our places, which we'll talk about in a second. My parting thought is just, if somebody's brave enough to take this on with distribution, then good luck unpacking the legal rights, because boy, there's a lot of John Williams on that soundtrack, is all I will say about that. That's not super legal. That brings us to the end of our Reflections of Evil conversation. Mike, this is the time on the show where we say thank you, first of all, so much for coming on and being an
Thank you. What a pleasure. You guys were delightful, and thank you for indulging me on such a weird film.
Love it.
So I think we did it. I think it fit the right.
It did.
The right thing. So that's good. So yeah,
this was definitely the right audience for a film like this, and hopefully some of our listeners will check it out as well.
Perfect.
But when talking about our listeners checking things out, where should folks go to connect with you online? Where do you, off the top of your head, do you know where a couple of your films are streaming that they might be able to check those out too?
Sure, yeah. Luckily, that's a nice thing about making B movies. They're cheap and they're everywhere. So you can find my stuff on Amazon. You can find my stuff on Tubi. You can find myself on Midnight Pulp, and even a little Shudder. I think Shudder still has Satanic Hispanics and maybe a couple other things. So I'm around, thankfully, on Instagram. You can find me at Madman Mendez. Same with Blue Sky, although I think I have all of like 80 followers on Blue Sky. The transition just didn't happen. I just, Elon did the Nazi salute. I'm like, I can't support this. I'm quitting. And maybe I regret it. I don't know, because it just nothing quite caught on like Twitter. And then I see all these people who said they were quitting and they're still on it. And I'm like, God fucking damn it. Should I have stayed on? Anyway.
So stay strong. Stay strong.
Okay.
We all did the same.
You're
Same
not
boat.
on X either?
Neither of us are on X.
I like that. All right. I appreciate that. That's good. So yeah. So at Mad Mendez, Blue Sky, or Instagram.
I will follow you while Donato says where folks can follow him online. By the end of his little description, you will have one more follower on Blue Sky. Go, Donato.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you.
You can follow me as always at Donatobomb, and that's going to be Blue Sky, and that's going to be Instagram and Letterboxd otherwise. And yeah, it's getting towards the middle of summer, which means festival season is right around the corner, and I've got a lot of reviews to write. So Follow me on the socials, and you'll see where everything is coming out now and in the future.
Oh, I almost did not. Hold on. Hit follow. I almost messed that up. But there we go. I got it. I write it. You were fast. That was a lot faster than I'm used to. Talk slower, my man. As for myself, you can follow me on Blue Sky, Monagle at bsky.social. You can also follow me at Matt Monagle on Instagram. I'm doing that until I am not. But most importantly, you can go to certifiedforgotten.com, read some of our incredible film criticism submitted by freelance writers from all around the world. That's a true statement. And you can sign up for certified.com/newsletter to get our weekly updates, what's published, what new podcast episodes are out. All of that goes directly to your inbox. Typically on Wednesdays, sometimes on Thursdays if I feel like it. You're not the boss of me. Leave me alone. That is our episode of Certified Forgotten. Mike, thank you so much. I know you said you had another movie, so there's probably going to be a sequel someday, I think.
A sequel to
you
what?
You had another movie for us, so there'll be a sequel episode for you on Certified Forgotten.
Sure, yeah.
I'm not promising any sequels to Reflections of Evil.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, am I responsible for that? Fuck. Okay, I'll call him up. We'll see what we can do. Probably Monster Dog. Who knows? Or again, I understand you guys have not tackled Neil Breen, but my goodness, I don't know if I can do that. Reflections of Evil and that to you. I don't know.
Quite a theme going. Quite a
guilty.
Theme.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see.
All right, Donato, take us home.
Copyright infringement, the movie.
Were you just scrolling down my IMDb to find the most random title you could pick?
I was reminding myself of your filmography, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, that's my hometown in Juneau, Alaska." So I was like, "Yeah." No, I try and work one Alaska mention into every podcast if I can.
Actually,
well, there we go.
It's fair.
Well, that show sucks, but anyway.
That's about it.
Anyway.